William Blake.
All right. Who of you, I want to see a raise of hands. Who of you have faced a challenge before? Yes? Everyone? Awesome. How many of you have been able to turn that challenge into a superpower? Awesome. A lot more people than I thought. That's awesome. Back in the first grade, I was first diagnosed with dyslexia. And dyslexia, it's a mental disorder that focuses on 4 different things: reading, writing, speaking, and spelling. And depending on the person, depends on the severity of it. For me, it was reading and speaking. And so through elementary school, I was considered the difficult kid. Through middle school, I was lonely. And into high school, I had friends, but they were in honors classes, and I was left behind. And it wasn't until about halfway through college to where I had this desire come up. I wasn't into this personal development thing back at the time. I didn't know about business or sales or psychology or marketing. I didn't know any of that. All I knew is that I wanted something more. I wanted to be an author. I wanted to be a speaker. I wanted to be a teacher. And just being bogged down by society, anyone who's had dyslexia or ADHD or autism or Asperger's, like, you know from society, you don't really get taught that in elementary school. You don't get taught that in the traditional school system. And so one day I came across this statistic, and it wasn't a motivational statistic or anything. It simply said 95% of CEOs read 50 or more books a year. And I thought that'd be pretty cool to be a CEO. But there's no way I was reading 50 books for a dyslexic who maybe read 1 book a year. Ain't no way. But 12 seemed reasonable. A book a month, 12, I could do that. And so I started reading. How many of you see missionaries walking the street sometimes? Yeah, I was that. I was carrying a book with me everywhere that I went. Anytime I had free time, I was opening it up. And then halfway through the year, I read the 12th book. I was ecstatic. A year goal done in half of a year. I was so energetic. I was celebrating with my wife and my kid. And then the question came to my mind: what if I can do more? And so I thought 50 was still way out there. That is impossible. But 40 seemed a little bit more plausible. So I started reading. A friend introduced me to this thing called Audible. Who's heard of Audible? All right. He's like, dude, these books that you're reading, you can listen to them. And so during my nighttime routine, I went from video games and movies and switched it to reading. I turned my car into a library and was listening all the time. By the end of November, I hit that 40th book and wrote it on my little note card. I had a little note card that I write 1 through 12 and then 40, and they're not that big, so you had to turn it around and write the numbers on the other side. But I hit it. And I thought, I still have a month left. I think I can read 50 books. That means 10 books in a month. So I started doing it. I'm like, okay, let's do it. 10 days left in December comes. I'd only read 3. Which means at that time, I had to read almost a book a day. And if any of you have families during the Christmas season, ain't no time to do anything like that. But any time that I had an earbud in my ear, I was listening to music. Anytime I was away from family, I always had a book with me. January 1st comes around. And I'm sitting on my desk, and I'm looking at that note card. And I see the number 50. Right next to it was a blank space. I reviewed that year. I went from reading 1 to 12 to 40 to on that card seeing 49 different books that I've read. And then things kept creeping back up from my past. Willie, you're lonely. Willie, you're never going to achieve anything. Willie, you're always going to be behind. And I don't know if you guys have this as well, but whenever you set a goal, you kind of like reset yourself emotionally. So, well, at least I do, right? And so even though I had done 12 and 40 books, those are astronomical for a dyslexic, it still felt like I was a failure. And as I looked at that note card, I reached over and grabbed a pen. And through all of what society had told me, I clicked that pen and wrote the 50th book on that card. I went from reading 1 to 50 books that year. And as I sat there in gratitude and sat there in humility, a question came to my mind. What if I can do more? And so I started to do more. That next year and the years after, I've continually read 60 plus books a year. But I got to keep going, right? That question keeps up. What if I can do more? So I started a coaching business for dyslexics to help them with self-belief and confidence. I came out and became a best-selling author. I speak on stages to share my story and share my experience with everyone. I just kept doing more. And as I looked at it, I'm like, Willie, how in the world did you get these astronomical goals from just how you grew up? 3 things always came to my mind. I want each of you, grab your pens and papers, grab your tablets, because I'm going to share 3 things that I learned that helped me go from where I was to where I am today. Number 1, be a GPS. Everyone got their app, the Maps app on their phone. You click on it, what's the first thing it asks for? Where are you going? What's the second thing it asks for? Where are you? Where are you coming from? If you know where you're going and you know where you are, you know the direction that you need to head. Where you're going. This is your ultimate goal. This is your dream. This is the finish line. This is that northern star that you're aiming for. What is that for you? Then once you know that, then you can come back to yourself. And you got to be more truthful with yourself than I think most people do. Because if you're like me, if someone asks me, hey, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm doing good, when I might not be doing good. So you got to be a little bit more truthful with yourself. And you got to ask yourselves the questions of things like, in the physical realm, do you got a six-pack? Do you have the energy to take you throughout the day? Or do you got a keg and need to lose a little bit of weight? Socially, are you able to carry a conversation and ask the questions? Or is it hard to keep that going? Financially, do you have the money coming in? Are you financially independent? Or are you just working paycheck to paycheck? Those are just a few of the areas that you just got to ask yourself. Because again, once you know where you are, where you need to go, you're able to know the direction that you need to head. Number 2, reverse engineer your goal. If any of you have been to like IHOP or a restaurant and they have the little kids menu, have the little mazes on it, I love these. I don't usually start from the start. I'm that dude that starts from the back and works my way back so that when I actually put crayon to paper, exactly, that I can able to just finish it really easy. That's what we need to be with our goals. We need to start with the finish line. Because when we start there and work our way back, we have the plan set and we're able to take the action steps forward. Let me give you an example of this. One of my clients, he had this goal. He wanted a girlfriend. Now, this isn't a typical one that comes up, but I believe in these principles and they work. So I'm like, dude, let's do it. So we start at the top. What do you have to do to get a girlfriend? Well, you gotta be dating girls. How do you date girls? Well, you gotta have a friend that's a girl, right? How do you get a friend that's a girl? Well, you gotta have a group of friends. How do you get a group of friends? That broke off into 2. First one was being at the places where your group of friends are. Put a pin in that. That next part is being able to talk to your friends and talk to the girls who one will hopefully eventually become the girlfriend. That breaks up into 2 as you ask, how do you do that? That first part is you gotta be true to yourself. No one likes to date a fake person. Put a pin in that. Then that second one is you got to build that skill of communication. You got to know how to ask the questions. You got to know how to listen. And then you're able to do the rest of it. We put a pin in that. And from there, starting with wanting a girlfriend, we're able to work down, hit those 3 points, create an action plan for him to be able to go forward. I can graciously say that he does have a girlfriend, so awesome for him. This works though. What you got to do is figure out what your goal is, work backwards, and then you're able to move forward with the action steps that you need to take. So number 1, be a GPS. Number 2, reverse engineer the goal. And the last one is what I call the 2% rule. The 2% rule, if your goal is 100%, like that's completion, the 2% rule is taking 2% action every single day to get to where you need to go. For me and my story, when I first set that goal of 12 books, I wrote 1 to 12 on the postcard. What was my 2%? Well, it was walking over to the bookshelf and picking out a book. Now, if you're like most people and myself, you got to pick out the perfect book. You got to do the perfect first step. So that's why it was hard. I was able to pick the book, and when I picked the book, I picked the smallest one for that first one, little purple book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Talked about it a lot today. Awesome. What was the next 2%? The next 2% was opening to chapter 1 and starting to read. And so they're just simple, small steps. Now, I get some kickback on this, and it's just like, Willie, why not focus on the 100%? Or Willie, why not focus on the 1? Well, in my experience, if you focus on the 100%, you hit an area, what we call analysis paralysis. This is where the procrastinators and the fake perfectionists live, and you just feel so overwhelmed with anything that you can't start. On the flip side, if you focus on 1%, it doesn't get a fire under you to start doing what you want, and you just stay in your comfort zone. That's why I love the 2%, because 2%, it's big enough to get that fire within you, to start that passion, to get out of your comfort and into a growth zone, but also small enough to where you're just not overwhelmed with everything that needs to get into getting your goal. 2% every single day to finish off and get to your goal. As I wrap this up, if any of you are focused on self-belief or working on your goals, I want you to look at those 3, and I want you to figure out where you're at, and I offer you this challenge. Pick one single thing that you need to do to start working towards your goal. Because now is the time for you to believe in yourself, and now is the time for you to take action. Because guess what? I cannot wait for the time that you get to celebrate hitting that dream, hitting that goal, where you're going to post all over social media, you're going to tell everybody about it. But I also can't wait for that moment to when, just like myself, that question pops into your mind. What if I can do more? My friends, each of you can do more. Each of you can change your challenge into a superpower. All you need to do is to first believe in yourself and take the action steps necessary to get there. And as Henry Ford said it best, when it comes to that first step in self-belief, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. Thank you.